right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Awesome. So today we're going to tackle something that I think is absolutely crucial no matter what you're learning or teaching, and that's the power of storytelling.
Ooh, storytelling. Sounds fascinating.
It is, it is. And we're basing this whole deep dive on the research of Kevin Brake, who's done some really groundbreaking work in this area.
Kevin Brake. Okay, I've heard that name before.
You probably have. He's kind of a big deal in the world of education and cognitive science.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that really blew my mind about his research is that just listening to stories can actually make you a better learner.
Wait, what? Like just passively listening?
Yeah, crazy, right? We'll dig into that a little later. But first, I think it's important to understand why storytelling is such a powerful tool in teaching. What do you think?
I'm all ears. I mean, we all love a good story, right? But why is it so effective for learning?
Right. Like, why does it work?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, our expert friend Kevin Brake argues that storytelling actually taps into some really fundamental ways that our brains are wired to learn.
Okay, so it's not just about entertainment then.
Not at all. It goes much deeper than that.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So think about it this way.
Okay.
How do little kids learn languages?
By listening to their parents and people around them.
Yeah, exactly. They're not sitting down with grammar textbooks at age 2, are they?
No, not really. More like absorbing it through everyday conversations and stories, I guess.
Precisely. And that's kind of Brake's point. Our brains are wired to learn through stories, through narratives. It's like a natural process.
Ah, so it's like learning by osmosis in a way.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But with stories, it's even more powerful because they engage our emotions, our imagination. They help us connect with the information on a deeper level.
Makes sense. It's like when you hear a good story, you really feel it, you remember it. It's not just some dry facts and figures.
Exactly. And, Brake's research has actually shown that stories can significantly improve both memory and understanding.
Oh, really? That's fascinating. Do you have any examples from his work?
Yeah. So in one study, he had students learn about historical events.
Okay.
Half them read about it in a textbook, kind of the traditional way.
Right.
And the other half, they learned about the same events, but through stories.
Interesting. So what happened?
Well, a week later, when they tested the students' recall, the ones who learned through stories remembered something like 20% more facts.
Wow. 20%. That's a huge difference.
Right, and it really highlights how stories can make information stick. And it's not just about history either.
Oh, so this applies to other subjects as well.
Oh, absolutely. Brake found similar results in all sorts of learning environments.
Like, give me an example.
It actually reminds me of a philosophy class I took in college. We were wrestling with this really abstract concept, existentialism.
Oh, yeah. Existentialism, that can be a tough one.
Super tough. And we were all just kind of lost in this dense philosophical text, all these big words and convoluted arguments.
Been there. So how did stories come into play?
Well, at one point, the professor, he must have sensed our confusion. He just stopped lecturing and started telling us a story.
What kind of story?
It was about a group of ancient Greek philosophers just hanging out, debating the meaning of life. And suddenly, all these abstract ideas we were struggling with in the textbook, they just clicked into place.
Ah, so the story gave it context, made it relatable.
Exactly. It went from these vague concepts to something I could actually grasp, something that resonated with me emotionally.
I love that. So it's not just about remembering facts, it's about making those deeper connections, right? Understanding the why behind the what.
Absolutely. And that's where storytelling really shines, I think. It takes information beyond just the intellectual level and makes it meaningful, memorable.
This is fascinating. And you mentioned that Brake found similar results in other settings, not just classrooms.
Right. He's actually done a lot of work with businesses, too, looking at how storytelling can enhance training and even improve performance.
Really? I wouldn't have thought of using stories in that context, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Totally does. One study he did with a Fortune 500 company, they were training employees on a new software system.
Okay.
And they divided the employees into 2 groups.
The classic study setup.
Exactly. One group got the traditional training, manuals, lectures, all that.
The usual dry stuff.
Exactly. But the other group, they got trained using narrative scenarios.
Narrative scenarios, so like stories built around the software.
Exactly. They were put into these simulated situations where they had to use the software to solve problems, kind of like a role-playing game almost.
That's so cool. I bet that was way more engaging than just reading a manual.
Oh, for sure. And guess what? The employees who were trained through these narrative scenarios, they made significantly fewer errors when they actually started using the software on the job.
No way. So storytelling actually led to better performance.
Yep. Buena found that they made something like 15% fewer errors, which is huge when you think about the cost of mistakes in a big company.
Absolutely. That's a real tangible benefit.
It is. And it just goes to show that storytelling, it's not just some fluffy, feel-good teaching technique. It can have a real impact on how we learn and perform in all sorts of settings.
This is really eye-opening. I'm starting to see the potential here.
Right. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. So whether you're a teacher, a trainer, a manager, or just someone who's trying to learn something new, storytelling can be a incredibly powerful tool.
I'm convinced. But I have to ask, how do we actually do it? Like, how do we weave storytelling into our own teaching or learning?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And luckily, Kevin Brake offers some really practical advice on this based on his research.
Lay it on me. I'm ready to take notes.
Well, first and foremost, he emphasizes the importance of choosing the right story. It can't just be any random anecdote.
Right. It has to be relevant, I guess.
Exactly. It needs to be relevant to the topic you're teaching or learning and to your audience. The goal is to find a story that really illuminates the key concepts you're trying to get across.
So it's like finding the perfect metaphor. Almost.
Kind of, but with the added power of narrative and emotion.
I like it. So relevance is key. What else?
Well, Brake also talks about the importance of delivery. How you tell the story can be just as important as the story itself.
That makes sense. I mean, a good storyteller can really captivate an audience, right?
Absolutely. And he suggests paying attention to things like your tone of voice, your pacing, speeding up or slowing down at key moments to build suspense.
Yeah, like a good actor, almost.
Exactly. Even incorporating a little theatricality, using gestures, facial expressions to really bring the story to life.
I love that. It's about making it an immersive experience.
Exactly. And, this all leads us to one of the most surprising findings from Brake's research and something we touched on earlier.
Oh, you mean the fact that just listening to stories can make you a better learner?
That's the one. And honestly, it blew my mind when I first read about it.
Okay, remind me how that works again. It sounds a bit like magic.
It does, doesn't it? But Brake's research suggests that even when you're not actively trying to learn something, just being exposed to stories, it can actually strengthen your cognitive muscles, so to speak.
Interesting. So like reading novels, watching movies, even just listening to people tell anecdotes, all that can actually make you smarter?
That's what his research suggests.
Yeah.
It seems to reinforce this idea that storytelling is so fundamental to how we learn and process information, even passively.
Wow. So all those hours I spend binging Netflix are actually good for my brain.
Well, maybe not all of them. But you get the idea. It's about the power of narrative to engage our minds, to help us make sense of the world, even when we're not consciously aware of it.
That's incredible. I never thought about it that way before.
Right. It really makes you appreciate the impact that stories have on us, whether we realize it or not.
Absolutely. It's like our brains are constantly weaving narratives, making connections, even when we're just passively listening or observing.
Exactly. And Brake argues that we should be more mindful of the stories we choose to consume because they are shaping our understanding of the world in profound ways.
That's a powerful thought. So it's not just about entertainment, it's about being intentional about the stories we let into our minds.
Precisely.
Wow, I'm so glad we did this deep dive. I'm feeling really inspired to explore storytelling in my own life and work.
Me too. It's one of those topics that just keeps unfolding the more you think about it.
It really does. And it leaves me with a question like, how can we actively use storytelling to not only improve our own learning, but also the learning of those around us? Like, how can we become better storytellers in our own right?
That's such a great question. And honestly, I think that's something we all need to grapple with, whether we're teachers, parents, leaders, or just lifelong learners.
Absolutely. It's a challenge, but an exciting one.
It is. And to help you on that journey, we've included some fantastic resources in the show notes. There are some great books, articles, even online courses on storytelling and its applications in teaching and learning.
Awesome. I'll definitely check those out.
Definitely do. And, don't be afraid to experiment. Try incorporating stories into your lessons, your presentations, even just your everyday conversations. You might be surprised at the impact it has.
Great advice. I'm ready to start weaving some magic with stories.
That's the spirit. And who knows, maybe we'll all become a little wiser and a little more connected in the process.
Here's to the power of storytelling.
Cheers to that. And that's a wrap on another deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.